The Kansas City Chiefs are attempting to reach and win their third consecutive Super Bowl, but that history of success does not start 2 seasons ago. The Chiefs have three rings in the last 5 years, 4 appearances in the Super Bowl, and they have made 6 consecutive AFC Championship games. Now, when that is the case, one of the realities of the NFL is that there will appear holes on your roster because you were drafting late in every round. You have to replace starters. You have to replace people who were contributors to your team and you lost them through free agency. Sometimes people retire. Sometimes people Tyreek Hill themselves out of Kansas City. Now, currently on the roster, those holes are at wide receiver and offensive tackle, and they have been wide receiver and offensive tackle for quite some time now. But before wide receiver and offensive tackle, one of the recurring nightmares for this Chiefs squad was the defensive end position. That said, now, guys, they've got a solid 7 names that I think have upside, along with 3 guys, maybe 4 guys, depending on the emergence of last year's first-round pick, who are solid contributors, and you don't just have to take my word for it. Now, one thing that these guys all have in common, all 7 of these players, is that they are under 27 years old. Another thing is that they have contributed, all of them last year, because the Chiefs did not acquire any defensive ends, either through the draft or through the ranks of the undrafted rookie free agents. All of them contributed in some way, even if it was only to the practice squad last season, and most of them in 2022. What do those 2 years have in common? Well, in 2023, and in 2022, the Kansas City Chiefs finished number 2 in the NFL in defensive sack totals. In 2022, they put up 55 sacks, good for number 2 in the NFL. In 2023, they put up 57 sacks, good for number 2 in the league. And I know what you're saying. Well, there's Chris Jones. Well, in 2022, Chris Jones did account for 15.5 sacks. This was good for number 4 in the NFL. Their highest contributor was number 4 in the NFL, and they finished number 2 in the NFL. This means that the entire defensive unit is doing some work, and it's even more stark in 2023. In 2023, finishing again number 2 in the NFL with 57 sacks, they added 2 sacks on to the previous year's total, whereas Chris Jones finished 17th in the NFL with only 10.5 sacks. Only 10.5 sacks for a defensive tackle. I get it, but that means that this consistency from the rest of the defensive unit is something special. Now, we will go through all of the names on the defensive end roster for the Kansas City Chiefs as they are currently constituted in their 90-man roster. This is the latest in a series doing this for the Kansas City Chiefs. I have already gone over the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, and the offensive line in a 40-minute video. But I don't think today's video will be quite that long. We are going to go man by man through the depth chart for the Kansas City Chiefs. Probably no surprise at all here. George Karlaftis is the lead dog at this position group. Coming in at 6'4", 263 pounds, which is actually down 3 pounds from where it is he was drafted. That 4'7", 140 is a good number, not necessarily elite. However, elite numbers, a 38-inch vertical leap and a 6'7", 3-cone drill, a 3-cone drill, one of those numbers that you like to see up there for any position on the football field, but especially one that gets as bendy as the defensive end. George Karlaftis, entering now his 3rd season as a rookie, he played 730 defensive snaps, and last season he played 755. So while he only played marginally more snaps, his tackles went up from 33 to 47. His sacks went up from 6 to 10.5. QB hits went up from 11 to 17. The guy, so he's one of the guys that came on late in his rookie season. I think it was the last 5 or 6 games of his rookie year were really where most of his production happened, and then he started his second season just sort of where that first year left off. Now, the interesting thing about him is that it seems that what happened was he really learned to close the deal. As a rookie, he was one of the leaders in the NFL with 7 tipped passes at the line of scrimmage. In his second season, he had only 3 of them, but again, the sack number went up from 6 to 10.5. I imagine that what we are seeing with George Karlaftis is someone who is nearing his ceiling in the NFL. He seems like a guy that could perennially be a 10 to 13 sack kind of guy. That's upper end of the league. No, that does not qualify him to be a Watt brother, but look, not many people are one of those types of guys. George Karlaftis consistently being a double-digit sack guy is more than you ever have the right to expect when you're selecting so late in the draft. Karlaftis was selected, remember, 30th overall. Remember, Travon Walker was drafted number 1 overall in that same draft. He has, over his first 2 years in the league, 13.5 sacks compared to the 16.5 by George Karlaftis. Now, he's a little bit more active in the running game, as he has 101 total tackles compared to 80 by George Karlaftis. But what do you want a high-end defensive end for? You want him to stop the run? You want him to be a consistent tackle guy? And here's part of the equation there. How often are teams running directly at George Karlaftis versus Travon Walker? Aiden Hutchinson went number 2 in that draft to Detroit. He has definitely been a more productive player than George Karlaftis with 103 tackles and 21 sacks. But again, that's the 2nd overall pick compared to the 30th overall pick. Kayvon Thibodeau went number 5 overall and is sitting at 99 tackles and 15.5 sacks, 19 more tackles than has George Karlaftis, but 1 fewer sack. Guys, that's 3 top 5 overall picks. George Karlaftis is competing right alongside them in the stats department. Jermaine Johnson had a much better second season than he did a rookie year, but he still only has 10 sacks and 84 tackles total on his career after being selected 26th overall. And then Logan Hall, who was the next defensive end selected in that draft at 33rd overall, has 34 tackles and 3.5 sacks on his career. Next is Charles Omenihu, who might be considered the lead dog in this fight had he played a little bit more. He had just 11 appearances last year, but still put up 7 sacks and 28 tackles, along with 11 quarterback hits. Just an absolutely sort of dominant guy in stretches for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is a very effective guy when on the field. It is yet to be seen when he... So, frankly, if I were doing this as honestly as possible, I would have his name last on this list because we just don't know. We don't know how long it is that he will be out with that injury that he suffered in the AFC Championship game. But with that height, that weight, paired with 36-inch arms, the guy can be a force to be reckoned with at any spot on the defensive line, and he's so hopefully he does not miss too terribly much time this season. Hopefully he's back by mid-season or so, which was again the case last season as well, as unfortunately as that works out for the Kansas City Chiefs. But as we've often talked about with injuries with this Chiefs team, a lot of them seem to be blessings in disguise. Charles Omenihu being out for that extended amount of time forced the defense to gel together, forced the defensive line to squeeze productivity out of other players, and Mike Danna, for one, stepped up and was really a productive player in a larger role for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that is going to continue into this next season. I have Mike Danna listed here at third over Felix Anudike-Uzomah. We have seen Mike Danna do this before. We have seen Mike Danna be productive. And he has the same type of productivity per snap numbers that he always has, and that is impressive because as a rookie, he played 334 snaps. In his second season, he played 534. In his third season, 2022 with the Kansas City Chiefs, he played 471, a little bit of a step down, but then last season he played 745 snaps for these Kansas City Chiefs, putting up 6.5 sacks and 50 tackles. And he's back now on a 3-year, $24 million deal, so we can expect Mike Danna to be a part of the plans going forward. And look, is Mike Danna the highest ceiling guy? No, but he brings the floor on this defensive end group up substantially. I do think that both George Karlaftis and Charles Omenihu are better football players than Mike Danna, but if either of them should find themselves injured, as Charles Omenihu does for the first part of this season, Mike Danna is a great consolation prize to have on the field. Mike Danna would start many places in the NFL. That might not be fair to say. If he had a whole lot of offers to start different places, maybe he would have taken them. So maybe I'm talking a little bit out of school there, but I think he would earn his way onto the field for all 32 franchises in the NFL. I don't think anybody is keeping him off the field and on the sideline. And then we have Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who, I thought coming out of college that his ceiling was sort of Mike Danna. I was not a fan of the selection in the first round. I thought that you probably could have traded back and picked him up later. I understand you were hosting the draft. He's a Kansas City guy. The story was just so good. If you're making an argument for Felix Anudike-Uzomah, George Karlaftis had an elite jump number, a vertical of 38 inches, and he had an elite three-cone drill. Felix has an elite jump, but it's the other jump. It's the broad jump at 124 inches, which is 91st percentile, and he also has an elite three-cone drill at 694, which is 90th percentile. He looked good while he was on the field. I'm not going to say that he didn't. What you have to start questioning at this point is why he wasn't able to find his way onto the field more. And then when you're looking up at those names above him, George Karlaftis is entering his third season. He has 5 years on his rookie deal as a first-rounder, meaning that he has 3 seasons left. Charles Omenihu is entering the second season of a 2-year deal. If he is as effective in his time on the field as he was last season, it is difficult to imagine the Kansas City Chiefs would want to replace him. I assume they would do it if they felt that they had to. Mike Danna just signed the aforementioned 3-year contract. Felix is entering year 2 of his 5-year rookie deal, assuming that 5th year is optioned. Meaning that George Karlaftis has 3 seasons left, Mike Danna has 3 seasons left, and FAU has 4 seasons left. So unless he does something to differentiate himself from the pack and really break out, which is absolutely possible, he has a lot of the tools to do so. He is a constant motor guy, and those are the guys that find their way onto the field in the NFL. Though the problem is, George Karlaftis and Mike Danna are constant motor guys as well. I mean, look, I think it's possible, and I'm rooting for him, but he's got a ring, you know? He's got a Super Bowl ring, so there's that going for him. He's young still, right? He's still 22 years old. There's still a lot of time for Felix Anudike-Uzomah to earn his reps. And look, I don't think I'm picking on him. As a rookie, like I said, George Karlaftis had 730 snaps. Mike Danna had 334. Malik Herring had 88. Felix Anudike-Uzomah had 218 snaps in his rookie season, much closer to Malik Herring than George Karlaftis, and nearly closer to Malik Herring than Mike Danna. I mean, it's 112 snaps difference between Malik Herring and FAU. It's like 108 to Mike Danna. So obviously not the rookie season you would hope for, but the rookie season he had. And things can get better from there. Now, moving on to Malik Herring. Malik Herring has definitely outperformed his draft position, but underperformed my expectations. Malik Herring is a guy that when he became a UDFA for the Kansas City Chiefs, I was immediately excited because the way he was a wrecking ball in college from time to time, absolutely demolishing everything in front of him. I thought that he definitely had NFL potential. I think that had he not been injured, he would have definitely been maybe a fifth-round pick. He played those aforementioned 88 snaps as a rookie, and last season he played 163 snaps, finally cashing in for 1.5 sacks for the Kansas City Chiefs and accruing 16 tackles over 2 seasons in the NFL. Maybe not the most upside in the world. In fact, I would imagine that he has a lower upside than the 2 names below him on this roster. But as the 5th name on a depth chart, I think he's a decent option for the Kansas City Chiefs. Then we have B.J. Thompson, 6'6", 243 pounds. He has put on 5 pounds in his time in the NFL, and he's got some definitive upside. Obviously, at 6'6", he has 34 3/8 inch arms. You add in the fact that he had a 37.5-inch vertical leap. That is some pass deflection capability if he's got his head on straight. So that 37.5-inch vertical is 91st percentile. The 40 of 4.61 is 92nd percentile. His broad jump of 125 inches is 94th percentile. Those are all elite numbers. Then he had a 706 3-cone drill, which is good for 78th percentile. That's a good number, not a great number, but look, when you're that long of an athlete, sometimes things slow down a little bit on the turnaround. Now, he logged 28 snaps and 16 special team snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs last season, racking up 2 tackles along the way in his 1 appearance in the NFL. Not precisely what you would hope from a 5th-round selection, but one of the things that we have seen pop up time and time again in the mythos of Brett Veach is that he knows where other teams seem to have a prospect pegged on their draft board, and he is willing to make a draft pick that might seem illogical to other people at the time. Look no further, and I know he wasn't the general manager at the time, but look no further than the Patrick Mahomes selection. Patrick Mahomes was not thought to be an elite prospect by very many people coming out of college, and it turns out he's pretty good at the sport of football. So we might question where it was that such a big gamble of a draft pick came from in B.J. Thompson, but probably Brett Veach really liked him as a prospect, had intel that some other team wanted him in the early 6th round, etc., and he was willing to make the pick where he did. Sometimes draft picks don't work out. Sometimes draft picks don't work out for a couple years, and sometimes draft picks don't work out for a few years, and then all of a sudden they hit and they are a productive player. I am not willing to give up on B.J. Thompson despite his low productivity numbers. That's actually fairly high productivity numbers for his snap count, but not exactly what you would like to see overall from a 5th-round selection. And if he can add a few pounds to his frame and get a few things figured out on the field, he definitely has some upside as a defensive end and a prospect in general. One of the things that the Kansas City Chiefs have been very good at doing is having players be productive in the NFL, regardless of where they were drafted or if they were drafted, even if those productivity levels do not match our expectations. The one really glaring exception that comes to mind is sort of CEH, who's not really been a whole lot on productivity outside of the running back position. But it's really rare that your first or second team running back plays special teams. Now, so I do expect that this year we will see more snaps out of B.J. Thompson, whether that is on special teams or some other route. Now, the last name on this list is the last name on this list not because I believe he is the worst defensive end the Kansas City Chiefs have, but because we just haven't seen anything yet. He was on the practice squad all year last year. He comes in at 6'3", 250 pounds out of Harvard. Now, he's an interesting prospect. 4.68 40-yard dash, 91st percentile, 4.38 short shuttle, 74th percentile, 37-inch vertical, which is 94th percentile, 122-inch broad jump, which is 92nd percentile, and a 7.30 three-cone drill, which is 67th percentile. He's got some movement skills. In 2022 at Harvard, he had 42 pressures, 26 hurries, and 8 sacks. As a sophomore in 2021, he had 24 pressures, 17 hurries, and 5 sacks. So he has some elite measurables and he has some elite stats at a lower level of football, and I think that Truman Jones has the potential to be a contributor at the defensive end position in the NFL. I would like to see him bulk up a little bit. You have him essentially the same dimensions as Mike Dana. He's an inch taller and 7 pounds lighter, If you could get him to that 260-ish pound mark, I think that what you're looking at is an athlete that has all of the size required to make a difference on an NFL roster, even if he can't be the guy that he was at Harvard. Now, you will note once again the Kansas City Chiefs did not draft a single defensive end in this previous draft. They did not pick up a single defensive end as an undrafted rookie free agent. They are going into this season with this group of guys. The initial 53-man roster for the Kansas City Chiefs last year saw them carrying 5 defensive ends. Again, Charles Omenihu was exempt. They had George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Malik Herring, FAU, and B.J. Thompson. You're going to start this season with Charles Omenihu on the PUP list. If you carry that same number of 5 defensive ends on this list, that would get you George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, FAU, Malik Herring, and B.J. Thompson again. I do not believe that this season the Kansas City Chiefs will be carrying 7 wide receivers and 10 offensive linemen into the season. I think that it is likely they carry 9 offensive linemen. I think it is likely they carry 6 wide receivers. That opens up 2 more roster spots. In that case, I think it's possible that Truman Jones finds his way onto the active roster. I do not necessarily know that that will be the case because they're going to want to have Charles Omenihu activated the moment they can have Charles Omenihu activated. So they are unlikely to carry 0 defensive ends on the practice squad. Truman Jones is a guy that, unless something pops off in the preseason, has not shown anything at the NFL level. It is unlikely that he would be poached off of the waiver wire. So I think that he would pass through the waiver wire fairly safely and end up on the practice squad. So that is sort of my prediction for this 7-man group at this point. So that's it, guys. Those are the thoughts that I have on the 90-man roster's defensive end position for the Kansas City Chiefs and how they're going to do this season, whether or not the Kansas City Chiefs can finish second in the NFL in sacks for a third consecutive season. That seems to be a contributing factor to Super Bowl success. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button, because the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing that I talk about on this channel. This is the latest in a series of videos where I am going position group by position group through the depth chart, through the roster, all 90 men. So I hope to have you back for the next one.